All right, hello everyone, and welcome. We're excited to join you tonight for this post-show conversation. All right, hello everyone, and Cindi Beth, if you want to take it away.
Sounds good. Well, welcome. My name is Cindi Beth Johnson, and I'm on the board at Uprising Theater, and I was thrilled to be able to see this production this evening. I want to just invite any of you who want to post any questions or comments that you have in the chat feed, and then we'll start our conversation.
So Ashley, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself while we're waiting for some folks to put some chats?
Sure. So I am Ashley Hovell. I'm an actor and director with Uprising Theater Company. I played Allison in this production and also co-directed this production with Shannon. Kind of been around with Uprising since the very beginning, and I'm still hanging out.
And hey, I'm Shannon T.L. Kearns. I'm the artistic director and founder of Uprising. I wrote Who Has Eyes to See and played Jamie and also co-directed. So too many hats, but it was a it was a really good experience.
Good. I don't know if we have a question right away, Shannon. Otherwise, I'll jump in. Okay. Well, I'd like to start by asking you what it was like to see it now. It's been a few years. I'm not sure how many years. But what was it like to watch the play again, both seeing yourselves as actors and as co-directors?
Yeah, it's fascinating to think back because this was actually my first step into directing. So that was really fun. And also I've learned a lot since then. But it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I hadn't watched this or even really revisited this script since we did it. So this was 2016. So good 4 years, a little over 4 years. And I actually, this is going to sound terrible, but I thought it was a lot better than I had remembered. And I think that's like partly because, I know my own writing has evolved a lot in the last 4 years, and so I was nervous to revisit this piece, but there are things that I would change in it, but more of it held up than I had thought. So it was fun to revisit this.
Can you say something? I see Shaylee as a question about how the connection between the play that we watched together on live stream a couple weeks ago and tonight's, because I know it's part of a series, both the connection you saw then and the connection you see as you think about it today.
Yeah, so when we originally did it, I didn't see this as as a connected piece. They were going to live in their own universes, and the more that I thought about them after we closed the show, the more it felt like I was trying to work out my family history with these pieces, and that they were part of a larger piece and a picture, and I wondered what it would be like to put them in conversation with one another, and to put this as a family and a trilogy of plays. And so there will be quite a bit. So Son of a Gun, which is the one we watched a couple weeks ago, that play is going to be totally different, totally changed. I think that this play is going to actually be much similar to what everyone just saw. I'm hoping to cut some of it and to change some of the storylines to make it fit with the other play. But the things that I was exploring in it, I think, are going to stay the same.
How about you, Ashley? How do you see the connection between, or the evolution from the Son of the Gun to this one?
I mean, I didn't know that they would be like, I mean, Shannon didn't know either, but I don't know. I guess knowing what I know with what Shannon wants to do, I'm excited to see where the connection lies or how they both get tied in with each other. But other than that, it's all on Shannon's shoulders.
Well, and a lot of things are seen better in retrospect, right? You create them, and then you kind of come back and see them in their connections. What was it like for you guys to co-direct?
Very cohesive. We worked really well together as a team. It was difficult being in the show as well, just because in scenes that we were in, you can't step outside and watch it. But I think most of our visions were the same, and most of what we were trying to do was the same. And I had the playwright in my back pocket, so that was also really nice.
I think for me, co-directing, I realized how much of a director I am not. And that was actually a really helpful thing for me to realize that actually, like, directing is not where my skills lie and not what I want to be doing. And so to watch someone like Ashley, who's really natural at it, do her work, I was like, oh, I need to not I need to not do that going forward and like let the pros handle it. And again, I think, we had talked last time about how like the first several shows of Uprising were all about me learning what I needed to stop doing. And this was the kind of the next evolution of, okay, you need to stop directing. Someone else needs to do that. And so that was a really good lesson for me.
Can you say something about your process, like how you would, if you were trying to look at a scene and you each had feedback, perhaps not always the same, how would you guys negotiate that?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, a lot of it was, other directors are going to go crazy, but a lot of it was talking while the scene was going on and kind of saying, like, is that what you wanted? Is that what we're looking for? Is that what we're going for? So that we kind of knew who needed to talk, or what we needed to talk about. And also we just took turns giving notes, I think. Yeah. I don't know. Do you want anything more?
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of it was, since we were both in the show, part of it was being able to have Ashley direct scenes that I was really acting a lot in, because I did a lot of acting in this show, and so like being able to have an outside eye on my stuff in particular was super helpful, because I hadn't had that in Son of a Gun. And then I think some of it too was us, in between rehearsals saying, okay, what's working, what isn't, where do we feel like the script is coming across and where is it not, and what might we need to do to make that happen? What are some things that we might be able to try in rehearsal that will shift that or whatever.
It seems like a really cool collaborative process, to be doing those things in real time and to be doing them from both perspectives. Can you say something about Grant has a really good question. What was the response of the audience to this play? How did they receive it?
Yeah, I was really struck by. So there were really two distinct camps of audience response to this play. We had a lot of teenagers come see this show. We partnered with Transforming Families, which is this amazing organization in the Twin Cities that supports parents who have trans kids and teens. And so this was the first time we partnered with Transforming Families. We've partnered with them several times now. And so they had brought a bunch of teens to this show throughout the run. And the teens loved it. Like, they were just totally invested. They talked about how much it meant to them to see trans adults on stage. And there was one afternoon, there was a matinee show where a young person came and saw the show and kind of like sobbed in the back for a while. And we were all like, oh, like what's happening? Like, is this young person okay? And they came up to me after the Talkback and they said, you know, can I give you a hug? And I was like, of course. And they just kind of fell into my arms and stayed there for a really long time. And the one thing that they managed to get out to say to me was, no one died in this play. Mm. And then they had to go. And I just remember having this moment of like, man, that is a low bar. And also, thank goodness that we were able to create this space and tell this story and hopefully like help this young person have this vision of a future for themselves that maybe they hadn't had before. And so like that was all super gratifying and really, really amazing. What I was struck by were the non-trans adults who came to see the show, who only wanted to talk about Catherine, the mom. And I think for good reason, right? There's a lot to talk about with her and that story. But I, as a trans person and as the writer, I remember sitting in talkbacks and feeling invisible and feeling like my story hadn't been heard. And that was really striking to me, to grapple with that and to think about what that meant for my writing and what that meant for Uprising moving forward, of like, if we were going to center trans voices, what did it look like to tell a trans story, but then to have people in the audience want to talk about everything about the trans story. So yeah, I still like have a lot of visceral reactions to those talkbacks and still am kind of like grappling with like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And as I think about rewriting the piece, will that impact how I enter that rewriting process?
It seems like you hit on some universal theme of relationships with mothers, but that took away from some of the other things that you were trying to do. What do you... Go ahead.
I was just saying, and I think that like Catherine was really polarizing too, right? Like, there were folks who couldn't understand her, and I think there were others maybe who understood her a little too well, and right, and so I think that there was just a lot there.
How about you, Ashley? What do you remember in terms of the talkbacks? Was there anything that really stands out?
I remember specifically for this show, just the strength and intelligence and the way the youth responded to it. And like having the youth kind of tell their own stories was really powerful. That's really what I was drawn to. I wasn't drawn as much to the people that talked about Catherine, which, I mean, like, I get why people talked about Catherine, but yeah, the youth that came to see the show and talked during the talkbacks is what stuck with me.
Do you have the sense, I mean, religion obviously plays a really big role in this play in all sorts of different ways. Do you have a sense of how that helped or made it more complicated to tell this story?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, people didn't really talk about the religious piece in talkbacks that I remember, which, reflecting back, is really striking, right? That like, this is a very religion-heavy show, and that was not something that came up. What was really important to me was that I wanted to make sure that that the religion piece felt authentic, and that Catherine didn't feel like a caricature. Mm-hmm. And I do know that when folks think with Catherine that there is something that is super outlandish that she says, I can promise you that that was a direct quote from someone in my religious world. And I made sure that, I had receipts to say like, no, like people actually talk like that. And it's important that you hear that. But I also wanted to make sure that everything that Catherine said or did had an internal logic that the audience would be able to say, I understand why she thinks like that, even if I don't agree. And then on the other side, it was really important to me that Jamie also be religious, and that Jamie and Allison be religious, and that this be a conversation about how religion can be used in two really different ways. Mm-hmm. I didn't want the narrative of religion versus anti-religion, right? Like I wanted it to be a conversation between two deeply religious people whose religion has spoken into their lives in different ways, because I felt like that was going to be more helpful than that, like the kind of anti-religion screed, or that people who are religious are always going to be bigoted, right? Like I didn't want that to be where we went with that piece. And so it was important to me that both of those voices be represented.
It seemed like you allowed religion to be authentically seen, coming up with very different conclusions in terms of the conversation, which is an invitation for people maybe who've only had one experience. Any thoughts on your part, Ashley, on the question of how religion is being used here?
I mean, I left the church because of the negativity around specifically LGBTQ plus issues. So I think to have, like Shannon said, to see the other side of progressive religion and being able to have faith while keeping diversity and standing up for all people, I think was really important for this show, especially. I guess I didn't think that much about the religious piece, to be honest, while we were doing this. It just kind of felt like a part of the characters for me. So it felt, in that way, I guess it did feel really natural and really authentic. So very well written.
Yeah, very well written. So Shannon, when you think about rewriting it, what do you have a sense of, like, where it's going to go? Is there something that you feel like you left out that you want to add, or something that maybe is going to be new to the story, or is it going to be more shaping what's already there?
This, I think, is going to be very much a shaping thing. Some of it is little things like correcting. Like I created backstories for certain characters that now don't hold because of what I'm doing in other pieces. And so some of it is fixing those backstories to make them cohere. I think a lot of it is figuring out what can be cut and how can we kind of like get to the point and stay there. And just on a technical note, this is silly, but the amount of food that we had to deal with in this show was horrific. It was horrendous. The food was disgusting. We had Martin Sheeks, who both ran lights and was a stage manager. He, thank God, found a friend of ours, Jonathan, who came in as a running crew and like helped us to prepare all of this food, because we ate 3 meals over the course of a 2-hour and 15-minute show, and we would have been sunk. It would have been awful had we not had them. So I think I will try and I will take out some of the food and the eating, or we're gonna order some pizza or something.
Also, that's just a shout out to all backstage workers, especially in this time of COVID. Like, thank the theater gods for backstage workers and stage managers and everybody.
Yeah.
Oh.
I loved how you juxtaposed the story with the sister. Will the sister show up again in the next play, do you think?
Yeah, man, I haven't figured that out quite yet, but possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see, right?
Yeah. I'm still working out some things. There's a lot happening with timelines that are really tricky, especially because of age gaps and the leaving and the coming back, and so trying to figure out what some of that looks like and how the timeline expands out over really two generations of people.
Well, what else should we be thinking about from watching this tonight? What else do you hope that we take away with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm it was really interesting to watch it again and to see how much we improved from even the first show to the second show. And so I'm excited about where the future of Uprising is heading, and how we can continue to explore these stories. I think for me as a writer, religion keeps coming up because that's part of my own narrative, making sense of family and kind of generational trauma and conversations keeps coming up in my writing. Obviously, writing a lot about trans men and representing those stories on stage, because we don't see that very often. So I'm excited to continue to explore that.
How about you, Ashley? What do you hope that we take away with us from this?
I think, at least from this show, challenging ourselves to watch theater in a really active way, actively choosing characters that maybe you don't identify with or don't see yourself in, and paying attention to that story. I'm excited about the focus of telling trans stories and kind of centering the trans narrative with future productions. I think that's going to be really big, and especially, I mean, like I said, listening to the youth in this show, it's so needed. And so that's what I'm most excited about.
Shannon, can you just remind us again of the mission of Uprising? I know it's evolved as you've evolved, as the organization has evolved, but tell us where it is right now and what you're excited about going forward.
Yeah, so Uprising right now is focusing for our main stage production. So when we can gather again, between 4 and 5 a year, of stories written by trans and non-binary playwrights. And what we're finding, and what's really beautiful, is that trans and non-binary playwrights are writing about all sorts of things, all sorts of justice issues that may or may not have anything to do with being trans, but folks are bringing their own lens and way of seeing the world to those stories, and that's really powerful. And the reason that we're doing that is really to work on increasing access in theater for trans and non-binary folks, and not just playwrights. That's also actors and directors and backstage folks. And so we're doing kind of this wraparound mission of training and acting training and developing new plays at some point. And so that's really exciting. And then on the education side, we're working on, again, increasing access. So sometimes that looks like acting training, but that also looks like programming for children and teens around playwriting and acting and storytelling skills, and really creating a space where they can explore their identities and themselves, but also can be connected to trans adults who are thriving in both in life and in theater. And so doing that connection work is going to be really exciting. We just started a trans playwriting workshop for teens. So super excited about that. So stay tuned. We're hoping to do a live reading of their work, late summer, early fall, depending on timing. But it's going to be really fun to explore. They started working on characters, and I think there's going to be some really juicy stuff in there. So it's going to be fun.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations to you as the actors, the co-directors, as the playwright. It's so exciting to see the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We're super excited to have had you here and to have you tune in. Make sure to go to the website and find out all of the stuff that's coming up. We're going to have a panel coming up next week about what it takes to develop new plays from some really incredible experts in the theater world and field. We're excited about that. That will go up on the website this week. So stay tuned for that. So thanks for being here.